Welcome, everybody, to the Nuggets of Gold podcast and YouTube channel. I am here today with Angelina Martin. And Angelina, you want to just say hi to everyone and tell everybody what you do and like how you're involved with the 49ers media?
Yeah, 49ers media, I wish. My name's Angelina Martin. I am a reporter here in Turlock for the Turlock Journal. It's a newspaper. And I also am editor at 49ersgoldmine.com. If you haven't followed us on Twitter at 49ers Goldmine or checked out our website, we have so many great writers that are producing like some of the best 49ers content on Twitter. And I also have a podcast with my co-host Steph Sanchez. It's called 49 Carats Podcast, and you can follow us at 49K Pod. And we're just two gals talking about football.
Yeah, no, and if you guys haven't checked out 49ers GM, I know we've had, at least on my show especially, we've had a bunch of guests from 49ers GM, had Javi, had Jason Aponte, had Leo Luna a few times, actually on a couple of my different shows. So definitely a great place for 49ers content, a lot of articles coming out there, and Angelina is a huge contributor there. So definitely make sure to check them out, follow them. And you were right, too. Like a lot of quality content about the 49ers, a lot of just really good opinionated pieces, which, I mean, I definitely like to hear, opposed to, a lot of people just kind of saying, oh, these are the stats of these guys and stuff like that. It's much more like freelance writing, which I love. I love that sort of content. But today we're going to be talking about Julio Jones a little bit, going to be talking about the 49ers rookie expectations, maybe some guys that we really like to, see succeed this year, especially. And then we're going to finish it off and just kind of talk about Angelina's career and like how she got to the point that she's at now. But let's start it out. Julio Jones, the 49ers, I saw yesterday, and I don't know which site this was. I believe it was CBS Sports that posted it. But they had Julio Jones, his best odds of where he could get traded was to the 49ers at plus 250 odds. And we talked about him one time before on this show. Angelina, you obviously weren't here on that one. But basically, my point was Julio Jones is one of my favorite all-time players. I think he is a generational talent. I still believe he is a generational talent. I understand that the contract is ugly. It's a lot more ugly for the Falcons, even if they move on from him. But what I've done a little bit of research just on like what his cap hit would be. And I believe it sounds like if the 49ers were to trade for him, they would add $10 million to their cap in 2021. And then the next years, it would kind of depend on if the Falcons are willing to take on additional cap to move on from him. And of course, that would kind of determine on what the cost is for Julio Jones. I know a lot of people expect him to get traded, for a lot of value. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think a lot of people have kind of overestimated how much a Julio Jones trade would cost. I brought up a hypothetical of just swapping Debo for him, and this was before the draft. And I'm a big Debo Samuel fan as well, so don't think I'm wanting to move on from him. But just in terms of like what it could cost, and I knew that was a potential one. Maybe fits the Falcons' timeline a little bit better, and fits the 49ers if they're trying to have Trey Lance become the starter right away, and just a veteran player there, and also a guy to mentor Brandon Ayuk. But what do you think about a potential move for Julio Jones?
I think it's obviously enticing. I mean, a name like Julio Jones is synonymous with, one of the top tier wide receivers in the NFL for the past, however long he's been in the league. I like to talk about the odds because the odds crack me up because we saw the odds for Matt Stafford to come to the 49ers. They were high. We saw the odds for Justin Fields to be drafted by the 49ers. They were pretty high. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mac Jones was higher, wasn't it? So the odds is like, yeah, I mean, they do have some play, but I don't like to look at those as like an end all be all. And there's a lot of upside. I think there's more down. Like the more I thought about it at first, I was like, that would be awesome. But I think just like considering the cap hit, I think the 49ers are 8th ranked in cap space with like 18 point something million. So it wouldn't be like devastating, but when you figure in next season and, free agents that the 49ers have to pay, and like they haven't even given Fred Warner a deal yet. So we don't even know what that's going to look like. So it's like a lot of unknowns. And obviously, I'm sure the front office is thinking about all of these things as well. I don't even know if they're considering Julio Jones, despite what people say as them being one of the top contenders for trading for him. And then, yeah, what are you going to give up for him? For a guy who he's still, putting out like 85 receiving yards a game, but is it worth giving up something that you already have for him with this team that, went to the Super Bowl in 2019 and, is definitely looking for a playoff push and hopefully another Super Bowl this season. So it's like, I love talking these hypotheticals, but it's always hypothetical and it's always dependent on so many other things. Like who would you give up and how much money do you have? So I know that's not a cut and dry answer, but I think I like what you said, that he could be like a mentor and it would be cool, but I just don't know if all of the cards exactly line up for him to come here.
No, absolutely. And it would be something, I think it would be really difficult. I brought this up in the last time I kind of talked about Julio potentially ending up in San Francisco. And one of the things I said was, and I believe their cap was still, around like 18, I think it was about 15, 18 million at that time. And one of the things that I thought was, even though like in theory you can make a move for Julio Jones and add on that $10 million in cap, you can't really, because hopefully their plan is to extend Fred Warner this offseason. And I would expect that a lot of, his initial guarantees will be paid off right away and will be put on this year's cap. And then you also bring in, there's a couple other guys on this team, like Eric Armstead, for example, who have really backloaded deals where they haven't been making that much money. I don't think the last 2 years he's made that much money, but this next year and then the years after that, it's going to rise a lot. And we don't know if he's going to see that full contract, but you start adding a whole bunch of salary to a team, to an organization that has Fred Warner that's ready to be paid right now, and then Nick Bosa, who's also ready to be paid in a couple years after that, and then also a Brandon Ayuk, Trey Lance, hopefully a few years down the road. But you kind of start adding up and you go, okay, there's a lot of guys that need to be paid. It would be really difficult. I do think the one way that it could happen, and this is the only way I think it could happen also, is if they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, there's a ton of things that have to happen for the 49ers to do that. I still expect Jimmy to be the week one starter. And that's not to take anything away from Trey Lance. I have huge expectations for Trey Lance. I love him. He was my quarterback too. Like going through the process, I'm a huge fan of Trey Lance, but they would have to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, I think. I don't think they want to do that yet. So I would kind of lean with you on, I don't think it will happen. Also, I love that you bring up the odds, how the 49ers are somehow always top like 3 or top 5 in odds for any player ever. I don't know if it's just the big market aspect of it, but apparently people like betting for players to get moved to the 49ers, which is funny.
I think it's because they're so relevant. Like, I don't know, like they're one of the most relevant teams in the NFL right now. Like everyone, it seems, is always talking about what are the 49ers going to do? Who are they going to draft? How are they going to do this year? What's going to happen with Jimmy G? So I think that since they're always like a topic of conversation, I think that the betting odds reflect that because they know people might put down money on it because they heard, people talking about it on ESPN.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the case too. I mean, also if you just have more fans of a team, like they're going to tend to, bet on their team than on acquiring guys like Julio Jones. So it definitely makes sense. But I think that we shouldn't expect this to happen, though. I would love it. I mean, I'm going to be very biased on this move, but I mean, Julio's been one of my favorite players. So had to bring up Julio Jones a little bit.